In 1998, two of R&B's brightest stars stood side by side and belted out a song that would top the charts and define a generation. But behind the glossy harmonies and choreographed smiles was a silent war, one built on jealousy, projection, and the relentless pressure to play roles they never chose. This wasn't just a feud over a song or a boy. It was a decades-long struggle for identity and respect, played out in public before either of them really knew who they were. And even now, more than 25 years later, the question remains: have Brandy and Monica finally made peace? Or are they still trapped in the story that made them famous? It was supposed to be a cultural moment. Two young women, both at the top of their game, coming together for what would become one of the biggest R&B duets of all time. The Boy Is Mine wasn't just a hit, it was a pop culture phenomenon. But long before a single note was recorded, there were already quiet murmurs following Brandy and Monica like shadows. Even though the two had never truly met, the industry had already chosen a narrative: rivalry. Monica would later reveal that by the time they stepped into the studio, they were already being treated like enemies. It didn't matter that there was no bad blood. Perception had already outrun reality. From the outside, they were a dream duo. But behind the scenes, something unspoken was simmering. The tension wasn't loud, not yet, but it was there. It lingered between their smiles, their interviews, and eventually, in every word they sang. The irony? Brandy said she'd always wanted to work with Monica. Monica said she respected Brandy, but none of that mattered, because once the world decided they were rivals, that narrative stuck, and neither of them had the power to rewrite it. On paper, The Boy Is Mine should have been a triumph of collaboration. Brandy was already deep into recording her album when she came up with the idea. Originally, she planned to sing it alone, but somewhere along the way, she decided the track needed Monica's voice. It sounds simple: one artist inviting another to share the spotlight. But Monica hesitated. She didn't immediately jump at the offer, and her reluctance turned out to be a warning sign no one wanted to acknowledge. In the end, it took Clive Davis himself to convince her to say yes, but agreeing to record together didn't mean they were on the same page. Years later, Dallas Austin, who co-produced the track, would admit that the tension wasn't imagined. According to him, Brandy thought Monica was too rough around the edges, too ghetto, as he put it. And Monica? She thought Brandy was too polished, too sheltered, too bougie. The truth was simple but impossible to say out loud. They didn't like each other. Even when the microphones were on, they were standing at opposite ends of a cultural spectrum neither of them had chosen. And from the very first recording session, the gap between them was obvious. What looked like chemistry in the music video was just clever editing. Brandy recorded her parts in Los Angeles. Monica laid down her vocals in Atlanta. Their voices were stitched together in post-production. The flawless illusion masking a partnership that had never really existed. What happened between Brandy and Monica wasn't just two teenage girls clashing over personality. It was something deeper, something harder to name. In psychology, there's a concept called the shadow self. It's the part of us we try to hide, suppress, or deny. And often the people who bother us the most are the ones who reflect that shadow right back at us. Brandy, the clean-cut suburban girl next door, had built her image on being controlled, composed, and likable. Monica was the exact opposite: emotional, unfiltered, and proudly street smart. On some level, Brandy may have seen Monica's bold honesty as dangerous. Monica, in turn, may have looked at Brandy's polish as fake or even superior. But here's the twist: neither of them was wrong, and neither of them had the emotional tools to recognize what was really going on. They were projecting onto each other the things they hadn't yet accepted in themselves. While the public chose sides, sweetheart versus hood girl, Brandy and Monica were both just teenagers trying to survive the pressure cooker of fame. But instead of being given room to understand themselves, they were forced into opposing boxes and told to perform. They weren't rivals by nature. They were made into rivals by an industry obsessed with pitting women against each other, and by a soapseed. By the time The Boy Is Mine hit the airwaves, it was already more than just a duet. It was the soundtrack to a war that hadn't even fully begun. The single dominated radio, topped charts, and earned them a Grammy. But behind the scenes, things were falling apart. The real breaking point came after Brandy performed the song solo on The Tonight Show. Monica was furious. It wasn't just about scheduling, it felt personal. And then, Monica's album dropped with the exact same title, The Boy Is Mine. Brandy saw it as a betrayal. The song had started as hers, and now it felt like Monica was claiming ownership of the entire story. What followed was no longer whispers, it was full-on chaos. At the 1998 MTV VMAs, rumors swirled that the two got into a physical altercation during rehearsal. Their teams denied everything, releasing carefully worded statements blaming the media. But years later, Dallas Austin told the truth. Monica had punched Brandy in the face before the performance even started, and yet they still took the stage. They smiled, sang, and sold the fantasy. Because that's what they were trained to do. Two young girls, barely adults, navigating an industry that demanded perfection, while they quietly carried bruises, both literal and emotional. This wasn't just teen drama, it was two girls being told to perform peace for the cameras while battling resentment in private. And in that tension, they found the only kind of control the industry ever gave them: control over each other. At a certain point, the feud stopped being about Brandy and Monica. It became about us, the media, the fans, the narrative. Every outfit they wore, every award show they attended, every interview they gave. It was all dissected, twisted, and turned into another headline about who was winning and who was losing. Social media hadn't even taken off yet, but the public didn't need Twitter to take sides. For girls in the suburbs, Brandy represented the dream: safe, graceful, and carefully polished. For girls from tougher backgrounds, Monica was the truth: real, raw, and unapologetically herself. Choosing one wasn't just about music, it was about identity. The rivalry became myth, and once it took root in pop culture, it was impossible to kill. Even when both women tried to move on, the narrative clung to them like a shadow. Their fans, without meaning to, kept feeding the story. And yet, in the middle of all that noise, both Brandy and Monica were just trying to live, trying to grow, trying to become full people outside of the characters the industry had written for them. But the feud had become a living thing, and it didn't care if they were tired of it. It had its own momentum now, and every time they tried to step away from it, something or someone would pull them right back in. Over the years, Brandy and Monica kept trying to prove that the feud was behind them. In 2008, they reunited on stage to celebrate the 10th anniversary of The Boy Is Mine. They smiled for the cameras and said all the right things about growing up and moving on. By 2010, Monica told Wrap Up TV that they'd finally outgrown the rivalry, even if their fans hadn't. She admitted that their clashing upbringings, Brandy's suburban polish, and her own rawness had created friction they couldn't name as teenagers. But now, she said, those differences felt more like balance. In 2012, they tried again, recording It All Belongs to Me, a supposed sequel to their first hit. This time, the vibe was different, more mature, more reflective. Brandy called it a moment of respect. Monica described it as an adult record, proof that they'd evolved. But if you watch the interviews closely, you could see it. The strain behind their polite answers. Brandy would make a joke Monica didn't laugh at. Monica would pause, her expression somewhere between forced patience and quiet irritation. Whatever piece they had built was fragile, like glass on the edge of a table. And then social media poured gasoline on the embers. In 2016, the So Gone challenge took over the internet. Everyone was rapping over Monica's old track, celebrating her legacy. When a fan asked Brandy if she'd participate, her reply was curt: "Chilly bye." Monica brushed it off, saying she'd grown and wouldn't let pettiness pull her back. But Brandy clearly wasn't done. She posted and then deleted cryptic messages about knowing the real story. Somehow, even Whitney Houston, who had been a mentor to both women, got caught in the crossfire. Monica called Whitney a fairy godmother to many. Brandy fired back with a long post claiming that she was the true fairy goddaughter. Fans immediately accused her of making Whitney's death about herself. It was a pattern neither of them could fully escape. Every time they tried to show the world they had changed, the old stories came roaring back. The feud was no longer just a part of their history, it was the measuring stick people used to judge their every move. In 2020, after years of distance, Brandy and Monica agreed to face each other in a Versus battle. For a few hours, it seemed like they'd finally left the past behind. The live stream drew millions of viewers, nostalgia, curiosity, and a tiny hope that this time, the story would have a different ending. But peace for them was never simple. The event was moving along smoothly until Monica introduced her song, So Gone. She started reminiscing about her past, about being that girl who wasn't afraid to kick in doors and fight for herself. It was an honest moment, maybe even empowering. But then Brandy laughed and blurted out, "Yeah, 'cause I was one of them chicks you kicked down the door and smacked." It was meant to be a joke. But Monica's face froze. She looked away, lips pressed tight. In that split second, you could feel the air change. Brandy tried to smooth it over, saying she was just kidding and didn't mean anything by it. Monica wasn't laughing. On the surface, it seemed harmless, just a playful jab between two old colleagues. But for Monica, it was something else entirely. She'd spent decades trying to shake off the label of being the angry, aggressive one. The stereotype the industry pinned to her since she was a teenager. And here it was again, dragged out in front of millions. Psychologists call this identity threat. The feeling that a part of who you are is being reduced to something small, ugly, or untrue. Monica had worked too hard to be seen as more than the caricature of a hood girl ready to fight. In that moment, Brandy's joke felt like another reminder that no matter how much she evolved, the world still wanted to keep her there. Brandy apologized. Monica accepted. They moved on with the show. But under the surface, everyone watching could tell. This was never going to be as easy as singing a few songs and calling it even. In 2024, a surprising bridge between past and present appeared when Ariana Grande reached out to Brandy and Monica. She wanted to remix The Boy Is Mine, a move that felt like a blessing for both women. Monica called the reunion comfortable, saying Ariana's warmth helped them feel at ease. Brandy agreed, adding that the moment wasn't just about music, but revisiting a pivotal chapter in their lives. It was a rare glimpse of harmony in a story marked by tension. Then, in June 2025, came the big announcement: Brandy and Monica would co-headline The Boy Is Mine 25th Anniversary Tour. Alongside them would be Kelly Rowland, Money Long, and American Idol winner Jamal Roberts. Brandy shared that they'd been trying to make the tour happen since 1998. Finally, the timing was right. Monica described their partnership as a musical marriage that stood the test of time. But beneath the excitement, the truth remains complicated. This tour isn't just a nostalgic trip down memory lane. It's the latest chapter in a decades-long psychological tug-of-war between two women who were never really allowed to just be themselves. Their story isn't just about talent or hits. It's about emotional resilience, ego management, and the painful work of rewriting a narrative shaped by youth, trauma, and industry pressures. As they step back on stage together, it's clear this tour could be either a triumphant homecoming or a slow unraveling. The difference won't be in their voices. It will be in how well they've learned to hold space for themselves and each other, without falling back into old patterns.